G'day, Asia Mahar here. Well, interestingly enough, on this channel, I know it's going on all over the internet, but seems like the subject of this notion, this ideology of pseudoscience, of the APA and the hegemony of Big Pharma, where else would this come from? People keep bringing comments to the channel wherein they start off describing somebody with BPD and then start saying they're psychopathic or things of that nature. And I'm well aware of the study. I read it. It's trash. It's ridiculous. Wherein the APA says that borderline personality is a female variant, and I don't know if they meant all females or just some, female variant of borderline personality. To that, I just say simply it's not proven. It's ideology. It looks quite otherwise agendaed to me. And then I looked up just quickly, because I'm going to be doing more on this, I guess, because people can't quit it. People are just believing this stuff. And if you want to believe everything that's said here, there, or the next place, it's not necessarily the case. But anyway, so I looked up what percentage of psychopaths are female. I didn't see a lot of results. But the one result I got was just talking about psychopathy in inmates in prison. So that would be 11 to 17% was psychopathy, whatever that delineation might have meant. And 30 to 36% male would be the thing there, the comparative, but or the opposite. So I think what's happening is that the APA and the hegemony of Big Pharma and the whole agenda that they seem to have that has nothing to do with common sense or even real science is to pathologize BPD as much as is humanly possible. I don't know why. But if we start there, and then there's things written all over the internet, maybe in some books now too, but it's not scientifically proven, and it really makes no common sense whatsoever. Not that everything should be reduced to common sense. But here I go with a response to another comment. And let me just state at the outset, I'm not here to argue with people. I welcome comments to the channel, and people will have their own notions and ideas. And I would assert that when it comes to people with BPD, that this idea of subtype ASPD is ridiculous. But it is what American Pseudoscience of Psychiatry and the hegemony of Big Pharma is forwarding. But based on the weakest study, I know there's a couple out there, but I read this the sort of main one, weakest thing I've ever read in my life. So a commenter says on my video, borderline personality relationships, top BPD, quote, facts, unquote, that aren't so much facts for loved ones. Because if you haven't understood anything about me on this channel yet, excuse me, please understand this. I see both sides. So I do a lot of, I want to hear people on both sides of the fence. Got BPD, whatever that means, but the diagnosis, been hurt by somebody with BPD. But I do not believe BPD is any variant. And how could you say it's a variant for females only of psychopathy? It's ridiculous. What about men? What about men? Anyway, there'll be more coming because people won't leave it alone. And so what I'm here to say is there are 10% of people more severely impacted with BPD, really severely, that I don't doubt when clients speak to me in this sort of verbiage, okay? But, I would suggest that for women that truly may be psychopathic, they need to be diagnosed with the diagnosis for that. Why is the APA running everything with their pseudoscience through BPD, it seems? Why aren't narcissists ipso facto psychopaths? Because before you hit malignant narcissism, and what that means I don't see people ragging all over people with narcissistic personality disorder that they are psychopaths. Something's wrong with this. So this commenter says, starts off this way too. Please consider this by the time I get to the end of the comment. My BPD is a neurotic mess. She's been diagnosed with BPD, but still has not come to terms with it. So right now she is a complete, beautiful mess. I love her. I know what she goes through. I highly doubt that. You see what she goes through, you experience what she goes through, but you don't know how she's feeling inside. Maybe she describes it to you, but again, how much you know what she's going through. Yeah, to some degree, sure, but on the inside, really, I don't know. And I feel for her, but the way she can let the disorder control her, oh yeah, like she's choosing that, right? First of all, BPD really isn't a disorder, but like, hey, got to keep it real and got to keep it controversial here, apparently. I don't think it's controversial. I think it's just common sense. And so you said that, or the commenter said, and I feel for her, but the way she can let the disorder control her, if not taken with compassion, can just be beyond. Well, she's not letting, quote, a disorder, unquote, control her. I don't know if you've watched many of my videos, but they really explain BPD in great detail and accurately. And perhaps it's not the compendium of everything. Of course not. But, and then the commenter says, foul? I don't know. She can say, maybe for all I know, maybe a typo, I don't know. She can say she loves me, she can hug me, and I fall for it. And it's that moment I express my emotions for her. Next, here goes a tango with Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Not accurate to BPD at all, but yeah, okay, trite and well overused across the internet. She can ignore my feelings. Oh, big shock, I'm sure. As if I just do not even exist. How do you not take these actions personally? Well, first of all, let's deal with the reality, commenter, with all due respect, that you're obviously a codependent. So you're not taking your personal responsibility for how you feel whenever she feels differently or whatever she does, or however she acts or reacts, which is her thing, her responsibility to take. She needs to take responsibility for that. So you said that she lets the disorder control her. That doesn't make any sense. And then so she can say that she loves you. Watch my videos here about why people with BPD can't love you, won't love you, haven't loved you, untreated this is, and don't attach to you. So there's that. And then, so is it a tango with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, really? Or is it your expectations unmet because you're with somebody with BPD that you described as a neurotic mess, but yet you have an expectation through your codependency that she's going to return feelings to you, apparently the way you're feeling about her? I wonder why that is. Have you ever thought about taking some personal responsibility for that? Or are people with BPD just, I'm not here to defend them, but are they doormats to be blamed for everything on earth and everybody's life? They have what they're responsible for, and then there's people with codependency who have what they're responsible for, choices, etc. And then the commenter continues, because when you set those boundaries, all these videos seem to want you to do, you only become to be put in this realm of their dysregulation where you no longer are worth their love or their hate. You simply have been cleared from all and the person says conscientious. I think he means conscience, or yeah, up there in the moment of life. You can be right face to face, and they will not see you there. Well, okay. First of all, if you could have typed clearly in English, it would have helped. Seriously, right? People need to pay attention. Would be helpful. Punctuation, paragraphs, sentences, periods, Spell check. Anyway, okay. Now I'm gonna have to go over it again because of that. So yeah, if you set the boundaries that people are saying you need to set with a person with BPD in your life, then this person says, well, but then you're not seen, and then apparently you're out of their conscientious. I think he means consciousness. I don't know. So in other words, as a codependent, you're suddenly not, if you have any boundaries or if you set the limits that YouTubers recommend you set, or many do that I would stand by, that is meant to take care of you, but you want to keep abandoning yourself, commenter, maybe other people resonate with this, to the whims and the fancy and the inability of people, somebody who's a person, quote, my BPD is a neurotic mess, unquote, who obviously isn't in treatment then, and so you're expecting her to be exactly what for you? Mutual, reciprocal love. It doesn't even sound like with your codependency that you're really maybe in that territory. People need to think about this too. I don't know you from Adam, so you know. So I guess you don't like hearing about boundaries and limits. That might be your codependency. And you're still trying to get something from your, quote, BPD neurotic mess that obviously isn't going so well. You might want to accept the fact of the reason for that. But no, you're going to go on to make it more muddy and more inaccurate. And you're going to sound like you're more of a victim than the average codependent. But you're entitled however you feel. So it's not true that when you set a boundary or you try to set boundaries with somebody with BPD, that you're out of their conscience or consciousness. And let me just also say that untreated people with BPD don't see you anyway for who you are, to begin with. Not in idealization, not in evaluation. And the more boundaries you set up, the more they will have to test, push back against that, because they're getting identity through you, unconsciously, not consciously, not manipulatively, not on purpose, but they're doing that because they have a lost self. So the more you erect boundaries, the less able they are to project onto you and have their sense of, quote, self, unquote, come from you, an identity. So, but they don't lose all consciousness of you necessarily, but they don't have all consciousness of you to begin with. Object relations, you know? I don't think you've watched many of my videos, actually, where I explain this stuff over and over again. But that's okay. So this is what you're experiencing, I take it. That's valid for you. I don't mean to say, it's not. So no longer love or hate, you're just out of their consciousness or conscience or whichever you really mean there. And they won't see you. And then she can still call me and say loves me but never come to see me, then ask for money but won't spend 5 minutes and give me her attention or even her affection, spelled really incorrectly. And if I show or express my hurt, she gets mad and says I'm just going to leave, but call me 29 minutes later, as if not a clue to the chaos I was just drowning in by the tears in my eyes when she comes to get the money. It's beyond just manipulative. Okay, wait a minute. Did she come to get the money from you, like holding a weapon? Or did you voluntarily give her the money? And was your expectation when you give her money when she asks for it that she'll show you a little love, little kindness, and a little affection? Because that's pretty codependent right there. So you're setting yourself up, it sounds like. So it's not all her fault. You're a party to this. Why are you giving her money if she doesn't see you and she won't give you the time of day? What's in it for you then? And now you're going to take it to the place. So you said it's just beyond manipulative. Well, she can't take your money if you don't offer it. So how are you being manipulated? You see, in your codependency at the least here, you're manipulating her by providing money in exchange for what you want, which is to be seen and some affection and attention, as you've stated. So think about that. Sounds like a transaction, but doesn't sound like a one-way, oh, she doing it all to you kind of situation. So it's not really manipulation, but you think that's manipulation. I would say if it's manipulation on the part of the, quote, BPD neurotic mess, unquote, it's manipulation on your codependent part too. So then the commenter continues, it's beyond just manipulative. Here we go. Those are the signs of dark triad trait, Machiavellianism. It goes beyond being able to deal with a BPD, even if you were to take all completed logic out of their something, I can't even read this, lacking logic, let's just say, dysregulated points of views and actions. Well, how in the world you leap to? Because you're giving her money, you want love and affection, you don't want to have setting boundaries, take care of yourself. A lot of codependency here. But she's all to blame for when she doesn't see you, and doesn't she? Yeah, she's got responsibility, but so do you. This isn't all one-sided. She didn't manipulate you out of the money. You gave the money, it sounds like from your comment, because you were hoping for kindness and love, or to be seen, and some affection. But yet you call that manipulation. That is a sign of the dark triad trait. Machiavellianism isn't a, quote, trait, unquote, by the way. But see how bad it's getting on the internet? No offense to the commenter. You can believe what you want, but you've obviously been ill-informed somewhere else. What you're describing is not Machiavellianism at all. And remember, you're dealing with a, quote, BPD neurotic mess, unquote. And with all due respect, you sound rather like a, quote, codependent neurotic mess, unquote. See, why am I saying this like this in this video, and why is there going to be more of this to come? Because I don't mean it personally to anybody, but people with codependency need to hear more of this. Because this is a great example, this comment. This commenter is taking no responsibility for themselves as a codependent. They're just blaming the borderline. Okay, the borderline has responsibility in things, etc. And apparently is a real neurotic mess. But what is the condition of this commenter? Because here's the thing. This is not a dichotomous reality that people with BP, okay, they got all these issues, they got all these problems, they do all this stuff to you. For many people, that's absolutely true. They need to take responsibility for that. They can't, but one would hope they would, and get into treatment. But here's this person who has a transaction with an individual who's, quote, his, quote, BPD neurotic mess, unquote, wherein she's not manipulating the money. He's given the money. And then he expects something for the money. Affection, to be seen. Okay, good. But that's so codependent. Yeah, but unrealistic. This commenter in the codependency has unrealistic expectations. Can anybody else relate to that? I don't mean to sound sarcastic or anything. It's just, these are not easy videos for me to do. But I'm not going to back away from them anymore. Especially when they bring up this topic. Because they are, this codependent or this person, this commenter, is trying to say of somebody diagnosed with BPD that they're showing signs of a dark triad trait, Machiavellianism. Nonsense. Nonsense. And you would know that how, sir? Because you're such an expert in exactly what? You see? I'm going to start turning the tables because people with codependency, and or maybe there's something else going on here, I don't know. But it's time that you stop parking everything. Some things belong to the person with BPD. Some things they do. Yeah, but then woody ho already, right? What about the responsibility of people with codependency, which is a spectrum unto itself? So this person is accusing his BPD neurotic mess of having the dark triad trait of Machiavellianism. I want to be respectful, but it's laughable and it's erroneous. It's inaccurate. And I want to say to you in a way, I don't take it personally or anything, right? But how dare you really? And where do you get this notion from? And why do you forward it somewhere else? This is why I don't even usually entertain these comments. Well, I don't think I'm entertaining it, but you never know. So, and I guess this person with codependency is expecting his BPD neurotic mess to be logical. There would be another codependent, in this case of the commenter, seemingly, what it reads here, that's another unrealistic expectation. They expect somebody with BPD who's a neurotic mess, and I take it probably untreated, though that doesn't mean they have any Machiavellianism whatsoever. Wow, dude, take some personal responsibility for yourself and then ask yourself, why are you still, quote, loving this person, unquote, and why do you want their, quote, love, unquote? What? That's all I can say. And yet, you have the unmitigated audacity to assume. A lot of assumptions going on around here lately. To assume on this channel and on the internet in general, to assume that you have the expertise to say that your BPD neurotic mess is got Machiavellianism. Oh, the condition and the state of the internet. Anyway, if anybody could relate to the transactional nature of this commenter's codependence and his unrealistic expectations of his, quote, my BPD neurotic mess, unquote, who he then tries to ascribe as being Machiavellian, dark triad trait, no, because when he gives her money after she asks for it, he wants to be seen and wants some affection and doesn't get it, and then doubles down and seems pretty angry. Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, hope somebody can relate to that. Hope the commenter doesn't take it personally. I'm just going to be keeping it more real here to help people heal. I am not the arbiter of YouTube or the internet, but I see stunningly ridiculous narratives being forwarded about people with BPD turning into all these other iterations of things. It's not accurate. It's a pseudoscience of the APA with a hegemony of Big Pharma. And you know what? It's not going to fly on this channel. That's all I have control over. I am going to counter this narrative of nonsense and call out a person with codependency who can't even take personal responsibility for agreeing to give his BPD neurotic mess money when she asks for it. And then he calls her a dark triad or has a trait of dark triad, which is Machiavellianism. It makes absolutely no sense at all. And I would suggest to you, commenter, you need to get some help. You need to take care of yourself. You need to deal with your codependency, and you need to check your unrealistic expectations at the door or in therapy. So whatever the person with BPD is or isn't doing, fair enough. But you think she refuses to control the, quote, disorder, but you're still there, transacting for your unmet expectations and what you want, your needs, and you're railing against YouTubers for suggesting that people have boundaries. I would suggest to you, sir, that I can't really help you. Take care. I'll find the off switch. I really will. Anyway, I mean this with no disrespect, but it's just time to start parsing it and keep it real here. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't be not taking your own personal responsibility as a codependent and holding the BP responsible for what's your responsibility. And clearly this comment is an outstanding example, unfortunately for the person, of that. No more, no less.